today we will start with the development of the various parts of the GIT. So starting with the esophagus, before that I want to show you this slide which I have shown you in my previous lecture. So what are the derivatives of foregut? So these are the basically 9 components which are arising from the foregut, that is part of floor of mouth including tongue, pharynx, various derivatives of the pharyngeal pouches and the thyroid gland, esophagus, stomach, duodenum, first and second part up to the major duodenal papilla, liver and extrahepatic biliary apparatus, pancreas and respiratory system. So this is the slide which I have shown you in my previous lecture. Now starting with the development of the esophagus. So esophagus is clear, it is derived from the foregut. So what are the events which are happening at 4 weeks? The respiratory diverticulum called lung bud appears on the ventral wall of foregut. You can see in this diagram, this is the primitive pharynx, this part orange color, this is the foregut. Now this lung bud or respiratory diverticulum is arising from the ventral wall of the foregut. Now this tracheoesophageal septum gradually partitions this diverticulum from the dorsal part. So you can see in the diagram, so this is the primitive common upper digestive and respiratory tract, then lung bud appears. So this is the part of foregut. Then the dorsally it is dividing this whole tube into two parts, that is ventral and dorsal one. So this is ventral one is going to form the trachea, and further the bronchial buds, they are arising from the trachea. That we will discuss in the development of respiratory system, but our concern for today's lecture is this esophagus portion. Now what is happening below the laryngotracheal groove? The remaining part of the foregut has esophageal part, stomach and duodenal part, we know it. So you can see in the diagram, so these are the components, this is the esophagus, stomach and duodenum. So these are the part which are basically arising from the foregut. Now from the duodenal part of the foregut, you can see two offshoots they are derived. So you can see one offshoot is coming from this side and another is coming from this side. So what are these offshoots basically? So these are the offshoots for liver and pancreas. So liver is including the biliary apparatus too. And from the mesenchyme of the dorsal mesogastrium, the spleen is developing. So that is clear. So this is the dorsal mesogastrium where the spleen is developing. This is the ventral mesogastrium in which you can see the bud is going and reaching up to the septum transversum, and later on it is contributing to the formation of liver. But here, so this is the component. When the laryngotracheal groove is formed, the remaining part of the foregut has these three components. Now esophagus, foregut is divided into ventral portion called as respiratory primordial or lung bud and dorsal part called esophagus. The dorsal mesentery of esophagus is called as mesoesophagus. Initially it is short, but later on it elongates. You can see in the diagram. So what are the reason behind its length? That is the formation of neck, then descent of diaphragm and enlargement of the pleural cavities. So simultaneously these changes are happening which are leading to the elongation of the esophagus. So that is the reason for its length. Now at 7th week, the process it is started from the 4th week. Now at 7th week, what is happening? The muscles are differentiated from surrounding mesoderm. The striated muscles in the upper 2/3 supplied by vagus nerve, and smooth muscles in lower 1/3, they are innervated by the subclancnic plexus. At 8th week, proliferation occurs and partially obliterates the lumen, and at 10th week, the lumen recanalizes, and at the end of 5th month of intrauterine life, the stratified squamous epithelium is seen. Now this is the development process. So basically, crux of the matter is that the esophagus is just arising from foregut. Once the tracheoesophageal septum it appears, it is dividing that foregut portion so into two portion, and then the lung bud is just appearing from that foregut. So the esophagus is further, the process is happening in every week. Some changes they happen. Initially the muscles they are formed, then the cord is formed, then recanalization is happening, and after that in the previous slide I want to show you this thing, that is at the end of 5th month the stratified squamous epithelium is seen. So this is important. So these are the sequences of events in the development of the esophagus. Now, what are the anomalies of esophagus? During process of the formation, or you can say the appearance of the esophagus, uh, if any event is arrested at any stage, that lead on to the formation of anomaly. Now, first is the tracheoesophageal fistula. Now, the trachea is separated from the esophagus by tracheoesophageal septum placed in coronal plane. And what is important regarding this plane is that it is extending caudocranially. So from below upwards, it is going upward and is dividing the foregut into two portions. Now, incomplete fusion of the tracheoesophageal folds result in defective tracheoesophageal septum, leaving a communication between trachea and esophagus called as tracheoesophageal fistula. So this is the reason. So this you can see in the diagram the various types of the tracheoesophageal fistula. So it occur in 1 per 3000 births, and it is associated with the esophageal atresia and other congenital anomalies. So what are those that we will discuss? So the various types of the tracheoesophageal fistula is due to failure of the caudal growth of the tracheoesophageal septum. So what is happening? Esophagus communicate with the trachea at its bifurcation. You can see in the diagram. Sometimes the fistulous canal is replaced by the fibrous cord. So this change is happening in diagram. A diagram is showing this change. And it is the basically 90% cases this type of tracheoesophageal fistula is seen. So this diagram is taken from your standard textbook. The proximal portion of the esophagus opens into trachea. So that is the second type. You can see in the diagram D. So the proximal portion of the esophagus is opening into the trachea. Then sometimes what is happening, both proximal and distal portions of the esophagus, they open into the trachea, but the way by which they are opening, that is different. So how it is different, you can see in the diagram C and E. So either they may open independently into the trachea or they may have the common opening. So first they fuse with each other and they are opening into the trachea. So these are the changes, or these are the types which are seen in tracheoesophageal fistula. But most common type is type A in diagram A, that is the most common type. In about 30% of cases, this tracheoesophageal fistula may be associated with the other anomalies. So they may be the component of vectral. You can see it's basically mnemonic, which is showing the various anomalies which can happen along with tracheoesophageal fistula. So we have taken the first letter of each anomaly. So V for vertebral anomalies, A for anal atresia, C for cardiac defects, T for tracheal fistula, or then is esophageal atresia is indicating E, R is renal anomalies, and L for limb defects. So they may be the component of these. So that is the it is seen about in 30% of cases. Coming to the next anomaly of the esophageal atresia, the persistence of narrowing of the canal by proliferation of the lining epithelium, it obliterates the lumen. You can see in the diagram. So this is the esophagus, dorsal portion of that foregut portion which is going to develop trachea and esophagus. So this is the dorsal portion. So may affect any part of the esophagus, but more frequently it is seen at the level of the bifurcation of the trachea. Fetus is unable to swallow the amniotic fluid, and the hydroamnios is associated with this anomaly. Coming to the cardiospasm or ecclesia cardia. So type of neuromuscular incoordination at the cardioesophageal junction which fails to open properly when peristaltic wave reaches. So you can see in the diagram, this is the normal anatomy. So this is seen in case of ecclesia cardia. So as a result, the proximal to the junction so dilates, although there is no mechanical obstruction. It is only the incoordination between the higher center and the muscles present in the esophagus that lead on to this pathology. Occurs due to the congenital genesis of the nerve cells in myenteric and submucosal plexus of the esophageal wall. So the proximal portion to that opening, it is dilated. So this is known as ecclesia cardia. So this is all about the esophagus development. In my next lecture, I will discuss the development of stomach. Thank you very much.